you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to SystemSoft Technologies LinkedIn Live Ask an Expert session where we'll be talking about how to easily improve workflow automation with no-code solutions. My name is Calvin Furest. I'm the Vice President of Solutions and Services at SystemSoft Technologies, and I'm joined by a couple of resident experts here as well. So I'm a Pennsylvania native. I've got about a decade of experience here in the no-code space, but the first person I'm going to introduce has far more experience to mine. Proud to have Treff LaPlante here with us. And Treff, if you could say a few words to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Treff LaPlante. I'm the CEO and founder at CitizenDeveloper and also a Pennsylvanian. And as Cal said, I've had 22 years experience pursuing no code. In fact, it's been my life's work. I read a study years ago from Microsoft that said that for every one person who can write code, there's 100 people who can work in visual development languages. And that really sort of lit the fire and set us down this path of producing these really high value, fast, affordable no-code solutions. Thank you.
Awesome, Treff, and thank you so much for joining us today. And also my pleasure to introduce Mr. Chuck Woods, who's also a Pennsylvania native. So Chuck, if you'd like to say hello.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Cal, and thank you for having me today. Good afternoon, everybody. As Cal said, I am a Pennsylvania native. My accent from Pittsburgh from many years ago probably gives me away. I spent 4 decades plus, so my title is senior consultant. That's what they really mean. I've been working with state and local governments for that amount of time and helping them improve operations. More recently in Harrisburg, both working inside of state government years ago, and then consulting back on various process improvement, various technology projects for the last 4 decades. So pleasure to be here today. Look forward to the conversation. Thank you, Cal.
Thank you, Chuck. So today, just to frame it up, obviously, if you're joining today's session, you might have done a little bit of homework, but just to make sure that everybody's introduced to the topic, we're talking about no-code development, which is really the art of developing sophisticated applications, but without having to do lines of traditional code in order to achieve the end result. We have a few installations local here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that we'd like to speak to and talk about, pivoting, the business challenges and the automation challenges they had, and how the CitizenDeveloper platform was ultimately able to help solve some of their issues. So start up top with the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development facing quite a long problem in that people would basically knock on their door from a municipality, somebody facing financial distress, looking to ultimately help get a little bit of relief for that distress to keep things like volunteer fire departments or, police departments running and in order. A very complex problem, very complex challenges facing that group. Had sought a number of different solutions that obviously, very costly or took too long, and some other difficult attempts and stabs at solving the problem. Treff, when they engage with CitizenDeveloper, leveraging your platform to deliver the solution, you're able to do some things that others really weren't. And I wanted to see, like hitting, with 1/6 of the budget and 1/8 of the time frame, right, to successfully deploy this application. Can you talk to us a little bit about, what led to that success? How were you able to help deliver?
Sure. So the first thing that people should understand about no-code deployments is that you don't have to deal with a lot of the technical stuff that would typically go into a software engagement. And in fact, you can kind of skip right to and focus on what the organization's needs actually are. And so in the case of DCD, for this particular application, we just jumped right in and started engineering the process with them from beginning to end. And so we end up collecting data from, I think you know the numbers better than I do, but from hundreds or thousands of municipalities, and processing it through the algorithm that DCD had decided was the right algorithm to generate the metrics they need to essentially forecast or shine a light on those areas that need the most attention, allows them to more proactively focus on distressed municipalities. And so the fact that we didn't have to engage in any of the typical technical, prep work and implementation work, and allowed us to really focus on the business organization's needs, I think that ended up shining really well in this example because they have a beautiful application and a really smooth process behind it.
Yeah, I agree. And it really helped to have experts on that side too, who really knew their landscape, right? And were able to focus in on those business challenges. But like you said, unencumbered from the technical burden, right? We got to, and to be clear on the numbers, I believe it's 2,700 municipalities, nearly 100 metrics per municipality, grinding through that engine and ultimately giving them a scoring system, right? So they can start to analyze that top 50, and get ahead of potential problems in an early warning system. Very robust.
And Cal, the key was what you said there. It was really allowing their experts to focus on the process. It was freeing them from saying, no, you can't do this, or, well, maybe we could, but we've got to check with the database guys, or, all those things that restrict creativity by the business teams. We didn't have any of those problems in a no-code engagement. So it was exactly what you said. It was really freeing their experts to imagine how this should really run.
And in another installation, Chuck, you were part of working through delivery for the Public Safety Delivery Center, right, through the Department of Corrections to deliver a solution, working through their technical requirements, which obviously the team did a great job in the weeds to deliver requirements to us, but faced a different, set of challenges over there with a different, orientation towards that solution. Do you want to talk, Chuck, a little bit
Sure.
about that engagement?
Sure, I'd love to, Kel. For those in the audience, you may or may not know, the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections is a huge enterprise. They operate well over 20 facilities, and they house 45 to 50,000 inmates. The administration wanted to allow the inmates to have more interaction with their family and their friends while they've been incarcerated. So they visualized the need for an application, a new application, similar in the DCD example, was a new application. It wasn't a rewrite of something old. They tried mightily a couple other ways to do it, but they turned to us. And in really a short period of time, Cal can go over some of those numbers. They created an application that will allow all the inmates to see pictures and photographs of their loved ones that were through a portal onboarded and made available through the system. So from a stakeholder standpoint, they had external stakeholders, meaning their families and friends of the inmates and the inmates themselves. So it worked out really well. Cal, you might want to comment on the life cycle there. Again, it was a very short period of time. I might add the application had to clear a lot of compliance requirements, both within the state and federal regulatory environment. So everything was done appropriately and swiftly. Cal, any comments on the turnaround time there?
Yeah, so important element to add, it was a pilot that was actually looking to change policy in the way that these photographs were handled for inmates. They face unique challenges over there. Think about, a photograph that could be soaked in narcotics, right, and brought in through the front door and delivered to a prisoner, or those that might contain hidden messages, right, and people are on the spot making difficult decisions. So to support this pilot, they had to have it stood up in 5 months. That's from intake of requirements through integration to their captor, to their core offender management system. And again, with some rather complex workflows, right? You're supporting policies regarding the appeal of a denied photograph, right? That's unique, to that sector, unique to Pennsylvania specifically, and something out of the box, although would have been nice or ideal, just simply isn't available. But the time frame was tight, able to be delivered right on time for a must-have live support launch. So And there are others. I mean, we could talk about working with the Department of Education and their application that's live in production, or several that are at the Philadelphia city level engagements. But for the sake of interest, we'll kind of move on to whether we're talking about any of these two applications or several installations that are serving the public sector already in Pennsylvania. There's some commonalities here that tie a lot of them together. And Treff, I was going to lean on you if you could, talk just a little bit about some of the business challenges and decisions, difficult decisions they had to make when they were really faced with a challenge that, simply put, traditional development in that case wasn't going to support them, right? So they had to do something different. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what about their challenges really made a no-code solution in this case be the right decision for them to make?
Sure. So, in I think several of these examples cited, all the typical challenges, come up. It's cost, it's deployment timeframes, agility, and it's quality. And that's pretty common. Folks have large backlogs of applications that they need to process through, and traditional development just can't typically keep up. Folks have hiring troubles. Sometimes it's hard to get the right staff, and in a traditional development environment, there's all sorts of technical specialties that are involved and have to be hired for. And all of this works into challenge projects. And I think there's a big study that says only about 16% of projects are completed on time and on budget. Unfortunately, government has an additional level of challenge that's fairly unique to them, which is that they've got to keep up with fast-moving regulatory environments. You mentioned there was the pilot. They only had 5 months at Department of Corrections. These new regulations come out all the time, and the government organizations need to respond effectively to that. And so in so doing, the problem is they have to move so quickly. They also grow their technical debt, which becomes a big problem on the back end, which is not unique to government, but it's exacerbated in government. So, all these problems government organizations have, and no code is especially interesting, I think, for government organizations because it is just so much more agile, so much more cost effective. And the end results are of, we've seen time and time and time again in actual examples, they're of at least an equal quality level as you would get with traditional development.
Cal, let me just quickly add to that. Treff brought up debtor technology, and you might be sitting there thinking, now where could I potentially use a no-code solution? I already have, this skill set built into my people. I have those licenses, the rest. There's a lot of applications that are sitting in your portfolio, whether they're owned by a delivery center or owned by an agency that were pretty much outdated. Maybe the original owner is no longer supporting your version. You have to employ staff augmentation resources just to kind of keep it afloat. So really with a no-code solution, you have two paths to take. One would be repurposing or modernizing a legacy application. No-code fits that really nicely. And then the second option would be, given the examples we just talked about, there was a new need, a need to be done quickly. And under traditional development rules and requirements, it couldn't be done in time, and you didn't have the budget to do it. So in those instances, you might want to think about turning towards a no-code solution to get either a legacy application modernized or to bring up a new functionality that the front office or some of your key stakeholders are looking for. So, Cal, I thought that's notable that it can be used in either case.
Yeah, and Chuck, you've talked a lot about this. I've been around you a long time to know some of your passion, and it's not. We're almost positioning this like it's a either or, right? And it really doesn't have to be a happy marriage of commercial off-the-shelf products, traditional programming and integration, no-code solutions. I mean, they really coexist, right?
Yeah, peaceful coexistence. I mean, remember the concept in international relations many, many years ago? They exist together. They're simpatico. I've been around a long time, and I remember 25 years ago when client server became the fixation of conversation over the mainframe, right? And everybody sort of thought of it as you suggest, Cal, an either or mentality, when in reality, it's really a blended approach, right? You begin to grow some of your new needs, or repurpose some of your old needs using a technology can be easily integrated with some of your existing investments.
Yeah, very, very well said. And I think that having the right blend, right, the right tools for the job, unique to the job, you can have a no-code application spinning on back-end data, much the way it might be for the DCED, right, while you still have traditional function, or an integration of a public-facing portal, like we did in the example there with the Department of Corrections, that's otherwise integrated to a highly customized, highly configured for the job back-end solution. So, won't belabor that point further, but really moving into the next subject is, okay, so now you've got a solution. So now what, right? Maybe Treff, if you don't mind, we've spent a lot of time talking really about what goes into the development of an application, what might be the right fit. Gave a couple of examples, but really that's only half the story. Right. The other half of the story is, what about the maintenance? What about, ongoing management of this? What about iteration, right? You have some points you could share about that?
Sure. So, the key to, so we're kind of touching on technical debt. And, a lot of people ask, well, what is technical debt? It's an important thing because it represents as much as 80% of your application budget. And what it is it's all the things that we couldn't do just because we were restricted by time and cost and everything else. So, imagine this perfect application. You have unlimited budget, unlimited person power, unlimited time frames. You're going to build this amazing application that runs perfectly the right way all day, every day. But the fact of the matter is we don't have that. So we take shortcuts. So we have a limited budget. We have a limited staff. We cut features. We have bugs. We have all these things. We have compliance issues. We have security issues and remediation. All this stuff we can't always get to constitutes technical debt. And for one project, it's manageable. But when you start talking about a portfolio of tens of applications, hundreds, even thousands like the Commonwealth has, it becomes a substantial burden. And the answer to this burden is put succinctly, simplicity. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Anything we can do to make a more simpler architectural structure or portfolio, an application portfolio that's just simpler, it's based on simpler technologies. That's the key to tackling this problem and recapturing all of that budget money that's going essentially to waste dealing with old problems. So standardization around common platforms, simplicity in the development tools, simplicity in the number of languages our team has to learn and the skills that we have to hire for. That's really the key to tackling a lot of these types of ongoing issues.
And Treff, it doesn't really eliminate the work per se, but what it does is it transfers the work to your team. Your team needs to maintain and secure the platform at a platform level, right? You got to work hard to maintain, compliances and et cetera. But, really we get to transfer our problems to you, right? I've known you, a better part of a couple decades as well. And I love dumping things on your shoulder so you can lift some weight here for us. But no, your team does a great job really, bearing that burden. So that way the customers don't have to.
Well, and it's along those lines, it's a huge mistake that's commonly made when we talk about no code, that no code somehow precludes the development team from being developers. And that's just not the case. And we could talk more about it, but no code is really about empowering the existing development teams to become more valuable to the organization. They can either work in no code and do more features per hour, or they can go work on other things, deal with legacy situations and issues. So, definitely we shoulder a lot of stuff centrally as the platform, but we do that so that the development team at the customer shops can go focus on doing other things, more higher value activities for their organization.
Absolutely. And lastly, Chuck, let you bring it home here. I know we got just a few minutes here, a couple of minutes before really moving into see what questions we might have from the audience. But, Chuck, I know you're really passionate and all this stuff really doesn't mean a thing at the end of the day if you're delivering solutions that aren't utilized, if they're not satisfying the need. If you want to talk a little bit about
Sure.
customer satisfaction here.
Well, I think everybody in the audience has heard at the end of a project, throughout the duration of a project, about the unhappiness of end users or their customers, be they internal, you're building something for somebody in an agency or in a bureau or in a department, or you're really touching citizens on the outside. One of the sort of hidden beauties of no code are things like customer service levels, service level agreements. They soar. They don't become issues because you have very happy people who, as Treff at the top of the discussion pointed out, they have a lot of time to spend on sitting down, sitting side by side with a developer who, by the way, might be somebody in the agency that's not a truly technical person. Some of this work can be done by just interested people in technology, particularly when it comes to enhancements or other things down the road. But the message I wanted to deliver is, at the end of the day, there are higher scores when you develop in this environment because people are more involved, it's iterative, and it happens fast. It's not something that's promised in 6 months or 9 months or next year. You just roll your eyes and go, they'll never meet that schedule. Well, you meet the schedule, Cal, your customer service level satisfactions go up, your service level agreements that you got to meet, or the vendor, in this case, SystemSoft, would meet, they're met more readily, more rapidly. So the overall quality of the stakeholder experience, the customer experience, the citizen experience is something that goes up.
Oh, thanks so much for that, Chuck. It's very well said. So at this point, as we're moving into questions and answers, I think I should introduce somebody here who's not on screen with us, and that's Byron Hutchinson. Some of you might have already heard from Byron or might hear from him in the future, but please do, for whatever questions you might not feel comfortable, asking or might not think to ask in front of the group, or if you happen to be watching a recording, Byron Hutchinson can field and get you through our team of experts to the right people for the job. So please reach out to him anytime. But I think we've been prompted for questions coming in, and I'll hand it over here to my back end team here, who's managing backstage and going to tee us up with the right questions. So, all right. So for the first question here, and we're going to be climbing over each other to provide these answers, I'm sure. But we want to describe a couple of they're asking for in the last 22 years. So probably just drawing a line at the year 2000 and beyond. What are some of the biggest successes of no code? And I'd love to kick that one off with a passion project that's near and dear to me. I love the feel good projects where you're really connecting with members of the community, making a real world difference. And I don't want everybody to roll their eyes here, when we talk about a pandemic story, but over in Houston, Texas, they faced a real challenge. As the pandemic was approaching, they wanted to get money in the hands of small businesses, but they wanted to do it a little bit differently. They didn't want to do first come, first serve. They wanted to really vet, these applications and make sure the money got where it was needed most to have the largest impact on the community. They approached us with, we had about, from the beginnings of conversation, about 2 weeks to have launched a live portal that, for the intake of all the applications. And then 2 weeks after that, when the application process started or ceased, the application intake ceased, a complex back-end algorithm was put in place to handle all of the regulations, right? By district and by LMI zone and, all these, all these different factors that had to go into, how are we administering these funds and vetting these applications and the complex processes, that needed to be worked through. I'm really proud to say we took a little over 3 million hits the very first day that went live after only a few days of development. We're talking like over the weekend of 4th of July, if I remember correctly. We had about a 4-day span, working closely with the with the counties and city representatives from Houston to make that happen. We were able to, in the end, distribute $60 million of grant funding to the businesses that really need it most. Treff, I know you could share 100 stories, but if you got a favorite couple you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, well, just to follow up on that one, like you said, 3 million hits it was developed over the weekend, 3 million hits the first day, took 30,000 applications and didn't go down once. So we were very proud of that. Just a couple interesting success stories of scale to talk about some big numbers. I know every consumer cell phone bill in the U.S., it's I think you know the numbers better than I do, Cal. I think it was 300 million cell phone bills coming in from 10,000 vendors in the U.S. The taxes are calculated on no-code software, so that's substantial. I know also in the same industry, the communication taxes are. Yeah,
I was going to you're not to sell yourself short. They're not only calculated, they're collected and then redeposited, to the FCC, right? There's a lot of processing there, a huge application.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's and then in the same industry, commercial taxes for communication taxes. I think there's almost 1 million business organizations that their commercial taxes are processed using no-code software. You probably have more detail on that one as well. And then switching industries, the corrections industry in some states, I think the number's over 30,000 parolees are automatically monitored and tracked using no-code software. So the software is actually very sophisticated. It dials randomly these parolees. It voice IDs them. It does several different geolocation checks based on their ankle bracelet and their cell phone and the cell towers. It geofences them, so it makes sure they're who they are, where they need to be, and then there's a whole process on the back end for the business side and process side of managing all that. So these are some very large scale applications that no code delivered, and these applications actually might not even exist were it not for no code because of all the challenges we mentioned earlier. So I think these are good successes.
Fixing a real world problem facing, in this case, the state of Virginia, right, who was able to move from 14,000 offenders that were incarcerated in home to over 30,000. That's a savings of 16,000 offenders that didn't be have to housed and paid for in a prison system. So really big deal to them, big deal to that community. And we've got more questions. Maybe we'll have to address in a future session here. We're going to be separating, some of the future events into more technical streams versus more streams oriented to the, to the business unit themselves. But we're about out of time for the moment, everyone. So I really appreciate your attendance, and this wraps up our LinkedIn Live session. And to learn more, please contact us for a complimentary consultation at www.sstech.us/PSPA, as I've seen splashed up on the screen a couple of times. Also, if you're going to be at PA TechCon this year, we're back live and in person. Really excited to be there, August 3rd at Harrisburg University. So please drop by our booth. I think we're on the 14th floor. So look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.